Hi everybody, it's Andrew here from Hobbies Australia and welcome to the first episode of Show Us Your Kits for 2022. We thought we'd go out of the gates this morning with a really impressive and very much anticipated and spoken about model, and that is Border Models 1/32 scale Lancaster. This is just phenomenal. This is just absolutely beautiful stuff. One of the first things I'd like to point out about this kit is to see this black band around the bottom. All the pre-production samples that were going out to various reviewers didn't feature that band, and there was a lot of comment that the box top finished much higher on the box base. And it looks like rather than reproduce the box top, which would have taken extra time and would have delayed the release of this kit, it looks like the people at Border Models have done this little cardboard strip, which is double-sided tape, and then they're just putting that around the bottom of the box to blanket off and make it look more complete. Now that's a really good idea, but as you might notice, when I got this and I went to open it, the protective tape on the back of the adhesive foam had actually come off, so the box top was fairly much stuck to the box bottom. So what I had to do was cut the corners and then gently peel back each side so that I could eventually get the box top off. Now, why was the box top sitting proud of the base? Well, when we take the top off now, okay, it's a very large, heavy box. It's close to 6 kilos of plastic. This is the way the sprues are in here. Now, we've got sprues on the side that what they've done is they've packed them on the edge standing up. And as you can see, that's what's making the box top sit up. So it's not an oversight, it's just trying to maximise the available space in the box. So when we get the box top off, this is what greets us. Wow. Like I said, nearly 6 kilo of plastic in here. 28 sprues, decals, instruction booklet, etc. So let's start going through this now. This video will probably go a bit longer than we normally do, but I think it's really important that we look in depth at this kit because of the comments that have been made about it, and also about the retail price. So let's see what we're getting for our dollars. When we start taking various bits and pieces out of the box, first thing we'll have a look at here is the decal sheet. So we've got one very large sheet, and I want to just very carefully take these out. I believe these are printed in-house by the team at Border Models. They are very nicely done, and they seem to be in register. There's not anything untoward there. A couple other bits and pieces we'll have a look at shortly, but here we go. We've got our various marking options for the airframe. The attention to detail here for the pilot's cockpit area, the radios, etc. This is just absolutely glorious. Really nicely done. Have seen a couple of comments and reviews where if you're using microsole, microset, you need to be careful because it seems that the Border Models decals don't actually react well with them. Just applying the decals with traditional means of just soaking the decal and then applying it to the model seems to be the best way to get these down. So that's the main sheet. The second sheet of decals that are provided, and this is, I guess, really a bit of an example of just how much information and how much detail is in this kit. Let's see if we can just zoom in on that. This decal sheet here is the markings just for the bomb load. Now the bomb load on this kit is phenomenal. There are so many options for what you can load your Lancaster up with. It's amazing. And the attention to detail that's gone into these is just phenomenal. I don't think we'll be able to pick it up, but if you do get this kit, or you do have the opportunity to have a look at it, just by angling the decal sheet so you can just see how much carrier or excess carrier film is around the decals. There's very little here, so the fit of the decals into various features on this model are going to be really spot on. Obviously bombs, okay, that's fairly straightforward, but if we were looking at the other sheet with the the details and the dial details for the cockpit and also for the various radios. It's just absolutely phenomenal. Beautiful stuff from the people at Border Models. The next thing included in the decal bag is metal or brass machine gun barrels for the 303s, so they're nicely rendered. A little bit surprised, and I've actually emailed the guys at Borders. There's no cooling jackets supplied with these, so need to find out what's going on there. Last inclusion in the decal bag is this very, very simple photo etch fret. Now what we've got there are the seat harnesses, if you like, for the various machine gun positions, where the gunners would sit on the strap belt. We've also got the pilot's Sutton harness, but we'll have a look at some parts in a minute, and you've got the option of either using photo etched brass or using the moulded onset that's been supplied with the kit. And I've just got to say, and I'll say this a lot when we look at this kit, wow, the level of detail that has been produced in this kit in injected plastic is phenomenal. By far it's the best I've ever seen, and when you look at it, you can see the heritage of this model. You can understand the passion and the investment in time and money, and this has been a real labour of love. So the guys at Wingnut Wings who developed this kit, who started work on this kit, what they've done is just phenomenal. And I know there's been a lot of comment out there about Wingnut Wings did all the work and then Border Models swooped in and did this and did that. And look, it is what it is. But from my point of view as a modeler, I'm just so grateful that these moulds have been used and this kit has been brought to market rather than those moulds being produced and sitting in the back of a warehouse somewhere, never to see the light of day. This kit is phenomenal. It's a museum piece straight out of the box. And obviously over time, there will be more aftermarket details and accessories will come out for it. I mean, looking at some of the things, it could be, you know, things like crew figures, things like ground equipment. Out of the box, this model ticks so many boxes. It's not funny. It's probably close to, and I really don't like to say this, but this is probably close to the perfect model. And I, in 45 plus years of modelling, have never, ever thought I'd see something or ever say something like this. This kit is just amazing. So enough rambling from me. Let's have a look at some more sprues. Okay, so moving on to the first couple of sprues, and we'll look at the transparent parts first. Some of the review models that I had seen pop up on various YouTube channels, the reviewers were saying they hadn't received their transparent parts, or the transparent parts had arrived in a separate box. I've highlighted the black tape on the bottom of the sample that I've received. So from everything I can see, what we have here is the type of model that's going to be received in retail stores and then ultimately to modelers over the next weeks, months, as freight can start moving out of China. We're looking here at the transparent sprues. There's two of them. They're secured in this foam type bag. Okay, and it has a couple of pieces have come off. But you know, we look here at some of these transparent parts. They're big. They're very, very well refined. Transparency seems to be quite good. There are a couple of slight blemishes on there, which I believe can be either buffed out, or using a product like Deluxe Materials Look Like Glass to enhance the finish on these transparent parts will really, really make this pop. Now, obviously on the Lancaster, things like the cockpit, the pilot's glass house, that type of thing, the bomb aimer's nose, the front turret, etc., really, really feature heavily on the model. So we really want to make sure that they are done properly. And I think what we've got here from Border Models looks to be very, very nicely done. So that's the first sprue. Second sprue, part of the radar dome for underneath the Lancaster, some internal bracing. That is the rear doors for the rear gunner. He would open those up and then climb into his turret. Tail end Charlie. There's all the parts for the rear turret. We've got the windows for the fuselage, etc., etc. When you look at this model, and we'll keep pushing through it shortly, just the attention to detail, and I keep mentioning this, and I will throughout the whole video, this kit is just sublime. This is a real labour of love, and as I said, I'm just so thankful that these moulds have been used by whatever company and haven't ended up sitting in a factory or in a warehouse somewhere just gathering dust. So moving on, what we've got here, and I'm just taking the sprues out as they become accessible to the box. I'm not following any alphabetical sequence or anything like that. I'm just trying to give you an overview of what's here. So what we have here is Sprue Q2. Now there's 4 of the Q2 sprue, and this forms the bomb load for the aircraft. So we've got the various size bombs that are here. The bomb load is quite significant. In actual fact, there's more bombs here than you actually need, but you do have a number of loadout sequences that are highlighted in the instructions. And we'll talk a little bit about the instructions shortly. But given the size of this model, given the expense of the kit, this is obviously something that a modeller has going to have researched quite extensively before he or she starts the construction process. So you'll have an idea of what sort of bomb load you want. You'll know all your internal colours, etc., etc. This is very much a model, I feel, the old saying is measure twice, cut once. I think with this model it's probably measure 3, maybe 4 times, cut once, because you really want to get this model right. Because it's so large, because you can see so much of it internally, you want to make sure that your colours are right, that your attention to detail is right. Now the moulding process is phenomenal, and a lot of those things are covered off with what border models have supplied in the box. The secret to the success of this model is going to be going to that next step and making sure that your colour call-outs are right, that your painting, your weathering, your washes, etc. This kit will be absolutely magnificent, and you know, it will build nicely out of the box. It will build even better if you're prepared to take that next step, and with the attention to detail that I feel a model like this deserves, it's just going to be a sublime build. Okay, so let's have a look here. What we've got the various 500 and 1,000 pound bombs. We've got the incendiary type bombs. There is another one which is the big cookie, and that appears on another sprue. But as you can see here, just the detail on these with the noses, etc., is just great. A little bit of there to trim off. On the neck, on a separate set of sprues, we've got all the tails. It's just absolutely amazing. There doesn't appear to be much in the way of knockout pins in any really bad positions that are going to be awkward. This has just been so very, very well thought out. There is a little bit of a textured finish on the bomb. Maybe some Mr. Surfacer would enhance that, but again, it's going to be up to the individual modeller. The next sprue we're going to have a look at is the E sprue. Now, again, there's 4 of these, and these show the engines and the engine bearers for the Lancaster. Now, you've got a couple of options when it comes to the engines here. You can either do the Rolls-Royce Merlin, you can do the Packard Bell engine as your second option, or they provide you with blanking plates, so you don't have to put in the engines at all if you don't want to. But these are beautifully done. We've got the superchargers there, all the bearings, the bearers, sorry, with all the various tubing and cabling. It's just absolutely amazing what's been rendered here in plastic. The superchargers, it's all there. It's just, again, careful building, painting, washes and weathering. This thing is just going to be absolutely jaw-dropping. Let's move on to another sprue. So following on from the engines, we're now going to have a look at Sprue Q1. Now what we've got here are the engine blankings that I was talking about. We've got the various spinners, we've got the radiator intake, and this is what I was talking about before with the tail assemblies for the bombs. Absolutely amazing. Now, a couple of parts have come loose in the packaging, but we have options for the propeller. So we have the early needle-style propeller, or we have the more, I guess, readily seen or recognised paddle-style propeller. You know, again, and these have popped off on the sprue in the bag, but look, they're just beautifully done. You know, any knockout marks are going to be easily concealed. They've really thought long and hard about how they've designed their moulds and how this has come through. Now, I don't know if we can get this, but a couple of various bits and pieces. Just there, that's a rendition of a parachute in the framework that the guys who operated these aircraft would have stowed their parachute in this frame, and if they needed to, they'd get it out of the rack, strap it on and jump out of the aircraft. But just the way in which these have been done is just phenomenal. It's really, really jaw-dropping. There's not enough positives about this kit. It's just amazing. So the next sprue we're going to race through and quickly look at is Sprue D. Now, Sprue D covers off on some of the undercarriage, or a lot of the undercarriage. And what I'm going to try and do here is zoom in on some of these photos, some of these shots, so you can see exactly the detail that I'm rambling on about. So obviously the first thing that pops out, two different main undercarriage wheel types, tyre types. So we've got the unloaded version and we've got the loaded version. Again, beautiful rendition on the tyre tread, just absolutely superb. Now I can see it here quite plainly, and I'm not sure how we're going to be able to get this with the current setup we've got, but it'll probably become a little bit more evident on some of the other shots that we take. But I don't know if you can see the oil can effect on the skin surface detail there, okay, on the aircraft. We see this replicated in various parts of the model. We see it on the main fuselage, we see it here on the undercarriage bays. This is just that attention to detail that I guess as modelers we've come to expect over recent times. But now we've got the guys at Border Models who have brought this wingnut wings designed model to market. Again, the attention to detail, the obvious love that's been put onto this model is just phenomenal. If we have a look here, undercarriage bay walls, and what you'll start to see on pieces such as this and this one, you'll start to see tubing, cabling replicated in situ on the parts, and it's done so very, very nicely. A real credit to whoever designed and constructed the moulds. The attention to detail is just absolutely beautiful. If we look here at the part of the, ooh, that's snapped off there on the sprue, but where I'm running my finger across now, the raised rivet detail, absolutely glorious. So very, very restrained and fine, yet such a great feature on the actual aircraft, or such a noticeable feature on the actual aircraft. Parts like this, you're going to need to be very, very careful how you handle them, because you don't want to obliterate that beautiful detail. This part here, these are the bullet channels for the rear turret. Bullet channels, bullet tracks, I'm sure somebody will correct me on what it actually should be called, but again, just absolutely beautiful. And the way in which this model is constructed, you'll actually be able to see this sort of detail when the model's complete. It's just amazing. So, moving on. Now what we've got here is Sprue S, and there's also Sprue R. Now these are the wing assemblies. The way in which this is done is pretty unique. They split the main wing. You have the centre fuselage, obviously. You have a wing insert, and then you have the wing extensions. These are extensions. Now, as you can see, we've got some nice, big, chunky locator tabs there, so we can get really, really good fit of parts. The raised surface detail, the oil panning, oil canning effect on the various panels is just absolutely amazing. And I'm going to try and bring this up to the camera so you can see what it is that I'm talking about. Just this beautifully refined detail is just amazing. Now, the other thing that's really good to see here is that how Border have packed this. These parts are in a bag by themselves. Now, what that means is that you're not going to have parts rubbing against parts in transit that could damage the surface detail. This rivet and oil canning effect that they've achieved is just sublime, and it would be a real pity if poor packaging caused the demise of some of this detail. This is just wonderful stuff. Just going to flip that over, and you can see some of the internal detail there. Things like the lightning holes here at the back on the flaps, etc., etc. Just absolutely glorious stuff. Sprue F deals with the cockpit section of the Lancaster. So this is our external detail, and again, talking about that rivet detail, talking about that oil can effect, Very, very nicely done. That's part of the nose gun turret. I'm just going to flick this over so you can see. Now, gee, there's nothing much on the inside. In fact, there's nothing on the inside of the cockpit section. To get the level of detail that they've strived for with this model, we then fall back to Sprue G, and Sprue G has got all the internal details. So you can see all these locating pieces here, all these locating guides. So what we do is we build up, we give this a coat of our internal colour. We can see some detail there, and there's a bit of a knockout pin, but I think that'll be covered by the bomb aiming apparatus. We then start building the internal detail, and as you can see here again, look at all the conduit, piping and cabling in situ. This is just absolutely jaw-dropping. Cockpit floor, there we have the actual instrument panel for the aircraft. More additional information here. This becomes, I think, part of the wireless operator's position behind the pilot. It's just absolutely glorious, and because border, wing/border have gone down this path, the amount of detail straight out of the mould has been achieved, and it is just phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. So the Avro Lancaster is probably the most recognisable four-engined bomber, or British bomber, of World War II. So I think it's worthwhile that we look at what this aircraft was built around, and that is its bomb bay. Now this is all featured on Sprue L. So what we have here is this is the bomb bay roof, which would in turn then have the cockpit sitting on top of it. Okay, detail there. That's actually the cockpit. I beg your pardon. That's obviously the bomb bay roof, and the cockpit would sit on top of that. But because of the amount of detail that they've put in here, this is the rib structure where all the bombs, etc., were hooked up onto, and we can see here. So they've moulded it as a separate piece. Now what this allows you to do is get in there and paint it to make sure that there's no nooks or crannies that are mixed. Because this is such a large aircraft, such a large model, those sorts of things could easily occur. The construction process is aimed at negating that type of problem and giving us the maximum, and I mean the maximum amount of detail possible in injected plastic. So that glues onto there. And then what we have here is all conduit, piping and cabling that then lines the bomb bay walls. Now, there is another 132nd Lancaster out there that was first to market, and that was a great kit. But the representation that we're now presented here from the people at Border is far above what that initial offering was. This kit honestly is going to set new benchmarks in injected plastic model kits. There's no two ways about it. So that's Sprue L. So that's most of the main assembly, or the large sprues, dealt with, and now we can start looking at some of the more finer attention to detail parts. And look, I'm really sorry if this is going on much longer than we normally do, but just there's so much plastic in this box, it's just phenomenal. So what I've got here is Sprue A. Now, I just want to point a couple of things out to you on here. So they're the kit machine guns, okay? And as we saw in the first couple of seconds of the video, there are replacement metal barrels included, which is a nice touch. But what I really want to do, I pointed out on the photo etch set that there were seat belts for the pilot. Now, you've got a couple of options here. You can use a standard seat, okay, and use the photo etch, or you can use this bad boy. And I'm going to ask Ryan to get some detailed shots of this. This is the pilot seat with the Sutton harness moulded in situ. Now, I've got to say, we've seen this before. I mean, I've seen this type of thing before, but it's only ever been, in my experience, achieved through resin. What they've been able to achieve here with injected plastic is, again, another indication of the amount of attention to detail and love for this model that's been lavished on it during the production process. This is just phenomenal. Things like, if you're familiar with a Lancaster, you know there's a big astrodome attached to the cockpit where the navigator could take a star shot with his sextant to confirm location. What we have here is a rendition of the curtain that would be drawn across the astrodome if the navigator had the light on in his working compartment, so obviously enemy night fighters couldn't see it. I don't know any other model in any scale that's gone to that level of attention to detail. If we look here at some of the radio components, this is just amazing. And remember, we've got from the decal sheet options to make those dials, to make those screens absolutely pop. This is just absolutely beautiful stuff. Absolutely beautiful stuff. Okay, Sprue A, loads and loads of detail parts. Moving right along, we're now at Sprue T, and Sprue T is the rear 3/4 section of the fuselage. And again, you know, rivet detail, beautiful, oil canning effect, wonderful. We've got all the various window holes, etc., etc. Packaged individually, so we don't have anything rubbing up against it to possibly damage the surface detail. But then, let's just flick it over. So, this is obviously the crew compartment towards the tail of the aircraft. Okay, you've got the option here of modelling the aircraft with the door open. Now, if that's the case, when you're looking through that door, you would see that wall, or that side of the fuselage. And as we can see, the surface, the amount of internal detail, so you're not just looking at a blank plastic fuselage. This is the attention to detail that the people at Border, Wingnut Wings, however you want to do it, have lavished on this model. I've seen some comments that maybe it could have gone up a little bit further, because depending on what angle you're looking at through this back door, maybe you could see up this way, but look, I think that's a bit of a moot point. But again, what we're seeing here is just absolutely beautiful attention to detail. You know, wow, wow, wow. There's not enough times I can use the word wow, I don't think, in describing this model. This is just absolutely beautiful. This is the tail plane crossbearer, I guess, for want of a better term. The tail end Charlie would climb across that. It's a nice rendition there of padding. The tail end Charlie, the tail gunner, would climb across that to get into his turret for his action station for the duration of the flight. So that's really nicely done. Again, as we can see here, and I mean, I can see it easily, and hopefully you'll be able to with the video, but again, you know, the surface detail, the oil canning effect, it's just absolutely glorious. I don't know if you've noticed or not as we've been looking at these sprues, but there's very, very little in the way of flash, as you would expect from a new mould. There's a little bit evident from what I'm seeing, but that'll only be a very, very quick clean-up with either something like a seam scraper or the back of a hobby knife blade. But you know, just be really, really careful, because we don't want to obliterate any of that beautiful detail. So Sprue I, now what we've got here, these are all the various componentry for the gun turrets, for the forward, the rear and the mid-upper. They're located on various sprues throughout the model, but you know, this is the sort of attention to detail we've got there: switches, banks of switches, etc., etc. Look, it's all just amazing stuff. Here's our cookie bomb. Okay, even here, this is the crew boarding ladder. So you could either, there's a stowed position for it above the rear access hatch, or it could be down on the ground coming out of the aircraft, depending on how you want to display this when it's built. Just absolutely beautiful stuff. We see there, this part is actually a gunner's seat, so the gunner would sit on that. I think that's for the mid-upper, and it would swing back so he could get in and get out. But you know, this is the sort of attention to detail that is provided in this model, and because it's so big, because the gun turrets, etc., the cockpit are so transparent, you know, you really do need this level of detail. Again, use your resources to access the right reference material, to get your colours right, your internal colours right, any particular model aircraft or any particular aircraft that you choose to model. It's just amazing what can be achieved with this. I'm just gobsmacked. Okay, so what we've got here is Sprue K. Now we've got various control surfaces, firewalls, etc., engine nacelles. These are the bearers that are in the cockpit section for the wing assembly. And why I have highlighted this is, okay, that's the rear one, which you don't actually see through the cockpit, but this one is at the front, and you can see this through the cockpit glass. Now, if you have a look here, and again, I'm going to ask Ryan to zoom in as best he can, or we'll get a photo of this after. You see this little piece here? That's actually the very gun, the flare gun that was mounted in the cockpit of the Lancaster, so they could fire a various coloured flare as they were coming into land to indicate if they had wounded on board or if the aircraft crashed and they were trying to alert searches to where they were. So again, the attention to detail that has been lavished on this model, the really fine points, is just absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. Again, getting the right reference material will really aid the modeller no end in being able to turn this model out as a museum quality model, for sure and for certain. Okay, Sprue B. Now this has got a lot of the cockpit detail, okay, and we'll just quickly have a look at this one. So we see, you know, piping, cabling, handrail that takes us down to the bomb aimer's position. Canopy framework. Look at that. That is just amazing. You know, I won't say that it's done away with the need to mask the canopy, but wow, it's getting close. Spoke earlier about some of the other parachutes. Here's another couple that are there. Remember, this had a 7-man crew. Additional radio equipment. What's really nice, the pilot's pedals, flight engineer's seat, fairing for the nose turret, pilot's seat sides. It just goes on and on and on. This kit, 1,400 pieces spread out over 28 odd sprues, is just amazing. Now, yes, there are a lot of option parts. We looked at the engines. We've got 2 complete engine sets there, whether it be the Rolls-Royce Merlin or the Packard Bell, or use the blanking plates. We've got multiple propeller options. There are parts on here that don't appear on the instructions. So there's things like the ventral gun for the early model Lancaster. It's actually supplied in the kit. It's not mentioned in the instructions, but it's on the sprue. So again, with careful research, you could, if you wanted to, mount that gun in position. And actually, we're going to have a look at Sprue P next, and Sprue P has that gun I'm talking about. Okay, so Sprue P. This is some of the internal detail. Things like tail wheels. So we've got the anti-shimmy wheel in either the unloaded or the loaded configuration. We've got the standard round wheel in either unloaded or loaded position. So 1, 2, 3, 4 different options for the tail wheel. We've got here the floor for the after section. So this is roughly where the door would be looking down, and those lugs there would be for the step. So the crew would climb up the ladder, stand on the step into the fuselage of the aircraft, and then make their way to their assigned position. Again, we can see the oil can effect, the raised surface detail. That part there is actually your rear door. And I did mention that piece, number 37, that's the ventral machine gun. So that was mounted at the rear of the Lancaster in the early models, firing down and behind the aircraft. And you can actually put that in, I think, to the aircraft if you wanted to. You've got a couple of different options there. That's come off in the bag, but that's the early style flare chute, later style flare chute. So again, use your reference material. What particular model are you building? Out of the box, this is advertised as a Mark I or a Mark III Lancaster. So again, careful reference research will dictate your build and will help you no end. There we go, we've even got the toilet that was mounted at the rear just before the tail gunner's position. Sprue U, and I'm not going to take that one out of the bag, that's an insert for underneath the fuselage. Ryan's convinced me to take this one out of the bag for you. So this is the underside of the tail end of the fuselage. This is where our tail wheel would be. We've got our formation lights. This is roughly where the ventral machine gun would be fitted. There's blanking plates supplied in the model, so obviously you don't have to put that in there. As I said, the machine gun is in the kit. It's not mentioned in the instructions, but it wouldn't be much of a stretch to work out how to put that in. Okay, so that's Sprue U. Sprue J is some wing parts, so wing top, or wing underside. Obviously that's where our undercarriage bays are. And again, surface detail, oil can effect. That would be the panel under which would have been stowed the dinghy. If the aircraft crashed into the water, the crew would open that panel up and get their dinghy out, put it in the water and hopefully load up and float away. But again, you know, we can see there, it's coming off the sprue, but just again, some beautiful, beautiful surface detail. Look on the underside there, you know, where we're going to be able to look up into the undercarriage bay, and you know, we can see ducting, cabling, rib effect, just out of the box, absolutely gorgeous. So, almost at the end of all these sprues, but this one's Sprue O. Again, we can see internal detail for the undercarriage bays, for the flaps on the main wings, etc., etc. Lightning holes, all the various bits and pieces. Look, just absolutely gorgeous stuff. Yes, the count part is high, but I guess, you know, if you're looking for this level of detail, and this is the type of thing that modelers are now expecting or demanding or wanting to get, sooner or later a manufacturer had to bite the bullet and go down this path. And kudos to the team at Wingnut Wings who developed this. And as I said, well done for Border Models for getting this to the marketplace, because the more you go through this kit, you know, it would be an absolutely crying shame. It would be almost criminal to think that moulds of this quality with this amount of detail could be sitting in a warehouse somewhere, never to see the light of day. So the fact that we've got this model on the way, despite all the hurdles that have been put in front of it, is just absolutely fantastic news for modelers. So this is Sprue O, more internal detail, as I said, just really, really nicely done. You know, a couple of things there that need to be trimmed out. Again, we look at where the knockout pins are. So much of this is going to be covered by the construction phase. Very much, as I've said before, a kit where the old saying is measure twice, cut once. I'm saying measure 3, 4 times, cut once. Lots and lots of dry fitting are going to be the secret to the success of this model. Remember that the tolerances that we saw from Wingnut Wing models are going to be exactly the same here. So if you apply an undercoat, if you apply a detail coat that's too thick, you're going to have fit problems, okay? So low pressure, light coats, building the colour up is going to be the best way to go with this. So the last sprue that we're going to look at here is Sprue N. Now these are the bomb bay doors, external, and the bomb bay doors internal. Now we saw that wonderful detail on the bomb bay itself, and now it's just capped off with these beautiful doors. Surface detail, oil can effect, you know, all the knockout marks are going to be concealed on the inside. Just absolutely beautiful stuff, beautiful stuff. So let's have a quick look at the instructions. Okay, so it's 36 pages. Obviously we've got our sprue layout there, pardon my notes. Photo etch decals, which we've covered off on. Now, I have said about making sure that you've done your research and that you've got all your reference materials ready. As you'll see here, the pictures are nice and big, and they show us the part call out, which is great, but there's no reference to any internal paint colours. So it's really important that you've got all that information to hand. Now, obviously, this is not a kit for a novice. The experienced modeller who's going to be looking at buying this and building this is going to have that sort of information. But just so that you're aware, they're not shown in here. Build sequence seems to be fairly straightforward, but it's going to be a long, slow process. This is not going to be a weekend build by any amount. So as we can see here, all the various options, photo etch harness, engineer's seat up or down. We see the photo etch brackets that we spoke about. I'm just going to flick back here, sorry. You've got your options here for your pilot seat. Which one do you want? The plain seat, which you can put the photo etch harness on, or the injected plastic one we saw with the Sutton harness already fitted, which I think is just absolutely glorious. When you're building this model and you're following these instructions, I would urge you to check the build sequence. One fellow in particular who I've been looking at his build review online has pointed out a couple of points in the instructions where if you follow these instructions precisely, you are going to have issues through the build. Okay, so very, very much measure 4 times, cut once. Also, some things that have popped out is some of the part locations on some of the gun turrets in particular are actually being mirrored, so you need to check your reference material to ensure that you're building the correct way, I guess for want of a better term. We see all these bits and pieces going in. It's just an absolutely amazing build sequence. It's an amazing model. We see the bomb load. We spoke quite a bit about that. The wing structure, or the wing supports, etc., etc. Just absolutely, absolutely glorious. Undercarriage, engine options, Rolls-Royce or the Packard. We put the carburettors and the superchargers in place. Careful painting and weathering. Those engines are going to just look magnificent. We then have there all the oil filter, the radiator, etc., etc. Just absolutely glorious stuff, ladies and gentlemen. The various turrets, the mid-upper, the tail, phenomenal stuff. I just am so blown away by this model, what's supplied in the box. It's just absolutely amazing. And we go on and on and on. Paint call-outs for the camouflage scheme are shown. It's the only paint reference that's made mention of in the model. Some nice colour shots of the model completed. The border model's sample built up, I guess. Decal location, all straightforward. Okay, and then additional photos of the completed model. And it really, really looks amazing. So they're the sprues from Border Models 132 Lancaster, and as you can see, a very, very comprehensive, a very, very well detailed, highly detailed model kit. Retail price on that kit is $1,000, and a lot of people have gone, wow, the price. And look, I think it's important that we discuss the price on this. 1,400 pieces, $999. Okay, if you crunch the numbers, it works out to about 71 cents per piece. I think part of the problem with the price perception of this model is that Border Models have been around for a while, and they've done a really good job with their armour and their introductory aircraft. But we've not seen a model of this calibre, certainly at this price from this manufacturer. So there's a little bit of reservation there. Bear in mind that all the design work, all the mould preparation was done by the people at Wingnut Wings. So if this model had have come out under the Wingnut Wings banner, I honestly believe that the asking price would be about $1,300, possibly $1,400. And my question is, if it was under the Wingnut Wings banner, would we be questioning the price? And I think, honestly, no. Wingnut Wings had the reputation for quality, for doing everything right, or to the best of their abilities. And what we see here is a kit that was designed by the team at Wingnut Wings, and then Border Models were fortunate enough or lucky enough to get the moulds and get the product over the line. So I think price perception, yes, it is an expensive kit, but what's in the box justifies the price. Availability of this product has been a little bit of a bugbear for us for a period of time. There's been issues around the world, as we're all aware, with COVID, etc., etc. Border Models are actually based in Shanghai, and currently our shipment is ready to move, but because of the restraints that are going on in Asia at the moment, we're having some real issues getting confirmation on freight. In actual fact, on Friday of last week, we received an email from our freight forwarder. Our order is being taken from Shanghai to another port called Ningbo, which is about 150 kilometres south. Ningbo has got extensive delays on freight, but freight is moving out of that port, whereas Shanghai is pretty much a closed shop. So it's still going to be some time before we get this model to market, but it's on its way, okay? We do have limited stock available. The pickup rate for this through retail stores around the country has been really, really positive, and it's probably not every couple of days I get a phone call asking me where is it, what's going on, what are the updates. And the moment we know what's going on, believe me, we'll get that information out there. But the Border Models Lancaster and 132, it's been a long time coming, but it's certainly on its way. Yes, it's certainly, I believe, worth the hype. It sets a new standard for injected plastic models, in my opinion anyway, and I really look forward to discussing this model with modelers around the countryside, and also seeing this model in competitions around the nation. So, thank you very much for your time this morning. I know it's probably gone a lot longer than we normally like to do at Hobbies Australia with our videos. But in the meantime, I'm Andrew. Stay safe, take care, and of course, let's build more kits.